All right. There you are. Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us. Welcome, welcome. All right, so now I guess we can like officially begin now. All right, Simone McIntyre and Justin Juice Black, thank you so very much to joining me on So Zoom In, where we are going to zoom in on all the wonderful things you guys are doing in London. You're over the pond, which is really exciting because I love to get some insight as to what's happening over there. And you have a short film, The Overcoat, which is getting lots of accolades. Bravo, bravo, congratulations. I would love to chat about that because it seems like a film that is very apropos as to what's happening right now. Justin, can you give a quick introduction about yourself? And then I'll jump over to Simone.
Sure, yeah. My name is Justin Juice Black. I'm a director, filmmaker. In regards to The Overcoat, it's an amazing story originally written by Nikolai Gogol, a Ukrainian writer, author from about 150 years ago, basically. And it has a lot of themes, as you said, that are still, highly relevant to today, and I thought it was I thought I would be able to bring a unique spin to it. And I think with the great reception, luckily, that it's gotten around the world, I think that, collectively we've succeeded in that. We've brought our unique spin to it, But yeah, it was just a great story, basically, that I wanted to. I was fortunate enough to be invited to become a part of the project and to do my film.
Yeah. Now you are a director, cinematographer. You are also an editor, and you pretty much did so much on this project. Simone, you're in the movie, and you're also a producer. How did you guys come across finding this story? What inspired you to say this is the one?
Well, I mean, we have for that we'd have to go back a few years, probably about 5 or 6 years. So wow. There was a project. There was a feature film project, a horror film that I was due to direct, a separate project. But very long story short, the financing on the film fell apart, so the film didn't ultimately happen in the end. But two of the people that auditioned for the role of that, one was Simone McIntyre, and the other was David, who plays the role of the thief and who also wrote the adaptation for The Overcoat. So although that original horror film didn't end up happening, we all still, kept in contact. We ultimately formed a great relationship, with each other. And I worked on projects with Simone. I worked on projects with David separately, and then David approached me probably about 18 months ago, maybe a little bit more, about The Overcoat, which he'd spoken to me briefly about before, because David is Ukrainian as well, and he said, would I be interested in looking at this adaptation that he's written for it or not for the screen? And he said him and his business partner, Stephen Whitaker, they were looking for filmmakers to help bring it to life. So that's how when he spoke, when I had a look at how he had adapted it and his take on the project, I was like, yeah, I'd love to be on this. I'd love to be involved in this because I know that I could bring I feel I could bring a unique take to it, and again with Simone is my producing partner on pretty much everything that I do. Do you know what I mean? So I couldn't have contemplated getting involved with the project if Simone wasn't involved anyway, And Simone being an incredible actor as well, it all made sense. Do you know what I mean? It all just came together. So that's the long story of how it came about, basically.
Well, it just goes to prove how important it is to, when you're making a film, it's such a collaborative effort, and you really have to work with people you know and trust and get along with, because you're giving so many hours of your life into it. So do you want to tell a little bit about the story of The Overcoat? Because it's winning so many awards all over the globe, which is so exciting. First of all, can people see it anywhere? Will people be able to see it anywhere? And what's that?
Yeah, it's still on the festival circuit, but then we expect it will be released. But immediate screenings, I don't think there's an immediate one, but there should be another one later on this year. We just had two festivals, and one was Paris and one was in LA, which was Kapow, and it won Best Experimental Film at Kapow.
Right.
Yeah, so if you just go to the Overcoat Movie on Facebook or on Instagram, I post where you can watch it next, streaming at festivals. But the basic story is about a man who lives a lowly existence, so to speak, lowly grey existence, and his life gets turned around when he gets a new overcoat, which represents, new life, vitality, vibrance, and everything that he thought he wanted to be and he couldn't be. And it's a bit short-lived in true Russian style. But I think what makes the story quite universal is that although the original story was written 150 years ago about this lowly civil servant, we have this thing, well, everywhere we have these austerity measures, because there's a homeless character in the story as well, and people's lives do flip if they find themselves in a situation. And I think that plus the location, the city, it was Oxford, which is like a universal European city. I think it kind of it translated into to a lot of people. They can really resonate with this because it could be anywhere that this was happening to this person, and all these characters. Although there was slight eccentricity in a couple of them, you could see how we could recognise them and where they're from, and I think that's perhaps what is made people warm to it. I think, that and the city of Oxford is another character itself as well.
That sounds very exciting. Well, I look forward to seeing it because I keep hearing about it, but I haven't had a chance to actually see it.
Oh, okay.
I know.
Fix that.
And I've met both of you guys before here in the States, and at a film festival, and it's been great following you on social media. And I just want to know, how did you get started doing short films? I know the goal is to always do full-length features, or series, but I know there is an art to doing a short. How did you get into that, and what's next for you?
For me personally, I came from doing like small music videos and stuff, and then doing visual effects work and post-production on other films and on a few British feature films as well. So for me, and it was I wouldn't say a smooth transition, but I knew that that's what I wanted to do in terms of actually creating the projects and actually producing my own projects and stuff. But being behind the scenes in the industry, it gave me a good insight into both what to do and what not to do, and so that was very beneficial to me. And I've always been a creative anyway, personally. So whether it's from I started off in the music industry, doing PR, working at award shows and stuff, representing big A-list American artists as well. And then again, then slowly migrated into the film industry and stuff. So for me, I've always been in the creative. I've always just been in the creative industries, full stop, basically. So it was kind of like a natural progression for me. And yeah, it's I think for me, one of the things is I try any project I do, I always try to outdo myself on the next one. I always try to keep myself on the edge. I always try to keep pushing myself, because when you feel slightly uncomfortable with the scale of what you're doing, or with what you're planning, that's where greatness happens. Do you know what I mean? So
Right.
for me, in terms of doing short films, often it's a case of, okay, I'm having to rein myself back in, because I'm like, okay, no, that's maybe too big of a scope for what we're doing for a short. So you have to be brutal in terms of editing. Like, for example, the first edit of the Overcoat, I think it was, how long was it? It was like over 30 odd minutes, wasn't it? 30 something minutes.
Almost 35, I think.
Yeah. So and then in the final cut, I think we brought it down to like 24 minutes. So that's one of the things where. And actually, there's two cuts. There's one that's a little bit shorter than that as well. But I think the extended version is about 24 minutes. So I think in terms of short films, for me, again, it can be difficult in trying to rein yourself, back in. You have to be very, how can I put it? You have to be very disciplined, as much as possible, I think. But yeah, again, we do have other projects coming up, which are more television based or more episodic based, and also feature length projects as well that we're doing. But in terms of short films, I think they're great in terms of giving you a way to create a small world. Do you know what I mean? Create something which is more easily digestible, and they can also be used in terms of also as a proof of concept. If you have a feature length idea, and if you're able to put that across in a short film, it'll help you greatly in terms of being able to convey this is how the feature length version of this world will look, or a multi-episodic approach to this world will look as well. So short films is, I don't know, I like to do them. We have a couple that are actually in production at the moment. But yeah, I enjoy it. Sorry, I'll let Simone go.
Right, so I have to. So it's wonderful that you have so many things lined up, in the queue, ready to go. So we're still in this global pandemic. I have, sometimes I call it plandemic, but that's just me. But this whole thing has shifted everyone's lives. How is that affecting you as a filmmaker, or both of you as filmmakers?
Last year, just before the first lockdown, we were in March. We were actually going to Paris to Recce for a shoot we had planned for another project. We planned to have our first feature done last year, but half of it would be shot in France. So that kind of changed. So I guess, as with everybody, it's changed our priorities. So we're thinking in terms of what we can do now, what we can do here in a more small knit team. And so there were some other things that we had going. We've just moved them up, and we hope to be able to swap them around. And I guess we're fortunate because we can do that even with the restrictions, and even with what we do as creatives and filmmakers, because in another industry they're not so fortunate to just, we'll just plan differently, make adjustments. And so we have been able to do that. I just think I'm fortunate because I have different creative outlets as well, so I found myself actually really busy all of last year. I never found myself going, oh, I'm stuck, the industry's stuck, I'm stuck. I didn't. It was a wonderful opportunity to reset. Oh, I shouldn't use that word, no, evil. But you know what I mean? Just pause and focus on, actually, what do I want to do? And I wanted to do more voice. So the next thing I'm thinking is producing projects, audio as well, because that seems to be a growing thing. So we've got all these little things bubbling over that we perhaps wouldn't have thought of this, if things were going the way they should have. So it's, in a way, it's forced you to branch out into other areas and try new things. I think so. And I do think I'm seeing people do things like, create the audio version of a project and see if it works as audio, and then do it visually. And that's a way of getting around not having so many people in one space, all these other things that you may or may not be concerned about if you were shooting it on film. So yeah, it's just forced you to think differently, operate differently, prioritize differently, but it can be done.
Right.
I think also because of the nature of a lot of the work that we do is often like very international based. So, for example, as Simone was saying, we literally were due to go for the recce. Again, I'm going to get the days wrong, but it was the days were like relatively, the tickets and the hotels and stuff was booked, say, on the Thursday. And then I think on like the Friday or the Saturday, it was announced that Paris was going into complete lockdown from the Monday. So like it literally, you couldn't plan. I mean, still now you can't really plan too much things, because on the drop of a dime, as they say, you'll get told, okay, we're going into lockdown, or the rules are changing and whatnot. So there's only so much you can do. Even like with our project, like we got a project that we're shooting, and we have an actor coming over from the States, from New York for it. But even that, we can't fully plan that. until we're confident that, okay, the restrictions aren't going to change a week or two from now. Do you know what I mean? Because once it's booked and it's locked in, now it's going to be locked in. At least at the start of the pandemic situation between like March and May last year, companies were a lot more flexible. They're like, okay, cool, we understand what's going on, so we'll refund your money, as luckily we were able to do with our situation. But now it's not as flexible, you know. People are almost expected to just deal with it. This is the reality now. Oh well, it's on you, you got to deal with it, you know. So it makes things harder to plan in that sense. But again, as Simone was saying, it also, we was lucky. Well, I mean, me personally, I was lucky in the sense of I do a lot of stuff, a lot of post-production based work as well. So I was able to that didn't change. So spending hours in front of the computer, that didn't change. Do you know what I mean? For me, luckily, that's what I was doing anyway. But if that wasn't the case, then what with a lot of our projects being postponed, it would have been a lot more damaging and a lot more stressful, mentally, emotionally, or financially, all of that, you know, all of the above. If luckily we weren't positioned how we've been positioned, you know. But it's hard because, as someone will tell you, we have loads of friends in the industry, and it's decimated things. They haven't worked for God knows how long. Do you know what I mean? Or you know, there's months in between jobs for them, and it's hard, man. Just seeing the effect that it has on people in your circle and people that you care about their well-being, and seeing how it's so horribly impacted them. It's really it's hard, man.
Yeah, it definitely hasn't fully recovered at all.
Yeah.
Do you think this is changing the face of filmmaking for you there in London, in Europe? Do you think it will ever go back to the way you knew it, or do you think it's something that you will all have to adapt to, or all of us have to adapt to?
I think in some aspects, there'll be a change, but ultimately, I think things will. I think there'll be an asterisk on a lot of things going forward. So, for example, you may still be able to do the same things as before, as pre-pandemic, but perhaps there may be some government requirement for certain things regarding travel, for example. So you can still do it. Technically, there's nothing stopping you from doing it, but there is the asterisk of, if you want to do that, then this is what's going to come with it. So it's like, yes, there's going to be a change, but do you know what I mean? So it's yeah.
Well, that's if you follow the protocol of filmmaking in London, right? So what if you went guerrilla filmmaking and you decide that you want to do a film on your terms without succumbing to rules and regulations? Is that something that is happening, or is that something people would rather not deal with?
I mean, I know filmmakers that have shot. I've been able to shoot several times in 2020, but those particular shoots were between the main. Actually, no, it was actually because we had the exemptions to be able to shoot not during the first lockdown, but during like the second one. There was exemptions, so we were still able to do it, and we still followed protocols in terms of masks on, minimizing as much as possible the amount of people on the set as well, you know, that needed to be there. Trying to, especially when you're doing stuff that's indoors, for example, and you're in confined spaces, you know, and yeah. So there was actually one shoot that we was due to do, but it actually got postponed at the last minute because the homeowner of the property where we was going to film in decided that, actually I don't want all these people in my home, because they're worried about because they had a young child, and especially if this was a time when obviously COVID-19 was new, so to speak, you know. So it would be the scientists weren't sure of what the transmission risks were, and so on and so forth. So because of that, the homeowner said, no, I don't want all these people in my home. So that got postponed several weeks because of it. So people still did guerrilla shoots and stuff, but I think that in terms of that comes down to each individual filmmaker, and if each person on that team, each member of the crew, each person that's in front of the camera, if they're all on the same page and they wish to do that, then they're adults, so that's their choice, I guess, you know, if they want to.
Oh, that's the key word right there, is choice. You know, and I mean, you as a filmmaker, you have the choice to make what kind of film you want. You have the choice to choose who you want to work with. So I would think part of that would be the choice of choosing, how you want to go about doing that. So as long as I believe as long as people have choice, that's what it's all about. Especially as filmmakers, you are artists. You are creating the art of story, and you're bringing to life, a thought really. And so you have to have that flexibility of that fluidity in order to create. And I think if you're stifled and you're under strict regimen, I mean, I think some of that gets lost. So, I mean,
but also I also think, and I've said this to people before, that I think sometimes when you have certain restrictions placed on you, you can often create your greatest art from that, because you're battling against it. You're in the corner, so you actually think, okay, you know what, F it, I'm going to do this regardless. I'm going to find a way to make this happen. It's similar to, you never have enough budget. You're always battling against the budget. Or if you've got enough budget, you don't have enough days. Or there's always something that you're battling against. And I think from that, where great art can come from. I'm not saying that's a stipulation to make great art, but that can be a contributing factor towards making something that wouldn't have been made otherwise. Do you know what I mean? So it's a give and take, but obviously, given the situation, I'd much rather that we didn't have the restrictions, obviously. But I'll find a way to make something happen regardless.
Well, you better, because you're an artist. You make films. I expect you to keep going no matter what. Keep making those films, and you have to keep doing, because you as artists have a responsibility, I believe, to really keep telling these stories that need to be told. And you give so many opportunities to so many people. Not only other creatives, but people to watch your film. I know when you have a child that watches a film, that can inspire them for the rest of their lives. You never know what story is going to inspire someone else just for you following your own inspiration.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what's so important about what you do. And one reason that I like short films, and I don't think people really give much credit to it, is you are creating a whole world in a very short time, within a very short span, but yet being so impactful, and that's important. And I think with so many streaming devices available now, I mean, there's going to be a platform for it somewhere, some way, that someone will see and be inspired by. So what you guys do is very important, and
how have things been out there with you? How are you finding it?
Sorry, I'm in LA. I have to say, it's kind of crazy, but I know some people who they're being more creative than they ever have been. They're doing things that they never believed that they could do because of this lockdown, like you were saying. And then there are other people. I was telling Simone earlier, I know someone who was working on a pretty high budget film, and they were doing testing morning and night, and the main DP was tested positive, so he couldn't work. Well, they lost 2 weeks, and he wasn't sick. He said he felt fine, and it could have very well been a false positive, but they lost so much money in that period of time just because they had to follow the protocol. And I get people are worried. I understand that, but at the same time, you can't stop being creative. Common sense goes a long way. But how many people have actually practiced common sense? But I think you as filmmakers, and I'm gonna throw myself in there too, because I feel like I'm part of the circle. We have a responsibility to keep creating, and if people want to get angry or upset, okay, let's talk about it. Let's come to a compromise. Let's keep creating. Let's keep making. It's about the art. And so
I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think, like, regarding like what you was just saying about the 2-week shutdown, I think, do you know what it is? I think literally that's a liability thing, because I think even though the DP was fine, if somebody else would have contracted COVID-19 on the set, and whether or not it came from him or her or them, sorry, still, and God forbid something happened to that person, say that person passed away from it, then the studio would then be on the hook. They'll be like, well, you knew that this guy this person had the disease, yet you still let him work. So do you know what I mean? So I think it's often a liability thing, whether or not it's frustrating as it is. I think that's the situation, and at that point, what can we do?
What can you do? I mean, there's so many different variables and just so many different things at stake. So you really have to, I think it comes to, what does everyone agree to do? Because I remember pre-COVID, I remember there would be people, I remember I was on a commercial set and there was a woman there who had the flu, just really bad. She was like horribly sick, but she wanted to be there. She wanted to be part of it. We all heard this, but we just did it. We weren't like, oh my gosh, our nose is running. It's like we did the work and we didn't think twice about it. Now I think when people like freak out, they freak themselves out so much that they think themselves into an illness. Not saying that's true necessarily, but I mean, it comes back to the art of the creation, and I think, as if you're a screenwriter, you have that time alone to write, voiceover work, you could do it alone. But when you get into that craft of, have the camera, the sound equipment, you have the actors interacting, you are in story mode. And I think people can't stop that from continuing to happen because we are by nature storytellers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that is one way. Now I think that is one thing that is definitely going to change in the industry going forward. Someone's got the flu or whatever like that. Like, there's no way that someone would be allowed on set like that now.
Not anymore. Yeah, knows you're off the set.
No. But then, also, it's not necessarily a good thing that we have this society where you keep going at all costs. You could do the commute across to London on the tube when you're really sick because your boss does not understand, doesn't care that you've got a bad cold or what have you, where really you should stay away from people. And there's the issue of, making other people sick. But actually, you're not doing your recovery rate any service by pushing yourself to work. And we have this culture where we show up, doesn't matter, but they're depending on me, doesn't matter that I've got a temperature, and that's not healthy either. so that's one more positive that is allowing people to really home in on, what, if you're really sick and really contagious, you're actually going to prolong your sickness and give it to other people. So that was the society we had before. Yeah.
And more aware of, taking care of yourself.
Yeah, it sounds really rude, but I think it was a new thing to a lot of people washing hands anyway, because I just didn't, personally, I'm not washing my hands any more than I was in 2019 because I just washed my hands, like, hello. But but apparently that's not how people, like, if I come in from being on the tube, being outside, I do that anyway. And it's interesting that for many people this is a new phenomenon.
Right, watch. Basic hygiene. It's like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
So
you're much more blunt than I am, but yeah.
I think it's the pandemic has also accelerated so many things which the industry seemed to have been heading in a certain direction anyway, and I think it's accelerated a lot of things. The cinema, the theatrical experience being
the release.
Like, I think cinema is the actual cinema experience. I think that's hugely important, and I think that's what. But I think it's important, but I'm not the type to keep my head in the sand as well. So having a romantic attachment to something doesn't mean I just want to ignore the practical realities of the fact that the world is going towards a more, whether it's on the go or expecting the same quality that you get in a cinema, but expecting that in your home. Do you know what I mean? So I think the pandemic has accelerated things into a direction which we were heading anyway, for better or for worse. But I think that also can lead to opportunities for filmmakers as well, because it's shown that there's still such a hunger for the content. There's such a people want content and they want good quality content, and whether they're going to go to the cinema to get that or at home, they want it regardless. So that gives people like ourselves as filmmakers a good opportunity to be able to give that to people, to give that to the consumers, to the audience, So there's some, I'm not going to say positives from it, but there are some things which have changed, um, which have changed again from the pandemic, not just in the production, not just in the on-set production, but in terms of what happens with the content with the art after it's been made as well. You know, and like I said, that I feel that's where we was heading anyway, but it's just been pretty much accelerated from that. You know,
I do think cinema will bounce back. I for one am absolutely sick to the back teeth of watching films that should be on the big screen on the small screen. I miss the whole sections of it. You know, you get your Instagram, your Twitter, all these alerts pop up on your phone, somebody calls you, all these things happen when you're watching it on Netflix or the streamers, and you miss sections of the film. You're not in the dark, you're just not in the film in the same way.
Right.
And some things are just not, they just don't translate so well, like some effects, you know, visually, certain things don't translate as well on the small screen, so it's a different experience. But so I do think it will bounce back. I do think there's a hunger for that, and I hope so, because I want mine to be on there.
Right.
yeah, I hope so too. I hope so. I hope so too. I hope it bounces back to the level of what it was reaching 2 years ago, for example. You know,
You figure even before this happened, though, theaters were declining because so many people were choosing, you know, to stay at home. You know, and then
Yeah.
movie ticket was, you know, like $15, which is the equivalent of like 18 pounds or something like that. I mean, you spend like $30 for, you know, popcorn, and a movie ticket, you know, and then it's a bad movie, you're kind of disappointed, you know, you're like, gosh darn it. But
But I think a year and a half of being forced to be at home, surely that's got to have some sort of effects of people craving something slightly different.
right,
I don't know, maybe I'm just speaking about myself, but you know,
our movies
it's not
in there.
insane. Yeah, the cinemas are opening again tomorrow, some of them. They've been closed since summertime, I think, August, September. I don't remember. Did they open again for a little bit?
I think they opened briefly. I think just because it was just before the Christmas time period.
They opened briefly and then closed again. So they've been closed completely since December. So they open again tomorrow. Some chains, but I don't know. There's just only so much you can do working from home, entertaining from home, everything at home. I mean, we saw, I don't know if you saw our pictures here, people queuing around the block to get their first pint. I mean, I don't understand that myself because I don't drink, but I do understand if you do something then you like that you enjoy and you actually perhaps take it for granted because you do it all the time. All of a sudden you haven't done it for a whole year. Like that's me in the cinema.
Also, with me, like I said, I always try to think of this in a practical way, because then if we think of it in a practical way, then we could find solutions to whatever the problem may be. And my only worry is that the return to cinema and stuff is a short-lived snapback. For example, people doing it because, okay, I haven't done it for so long, and then they do it, and then for whatever reason they're like, oh, actually, I prefer to watch this at home. I'm going to catch this on XYZ platform. Do you know what I mean? And I hope that's not the case, but I think things like that may lead to changes in the cinema experience anyway. So because they'll be forced to adapt because people have a different approach, or people may have a different approach, a different expectation now. So it might be the case of cinema might become even more of a premium experience. Do you know what I mean? Even more expensive, whatever.
Yeah.
Because they have to make it more of an event. But it was already heading that way insofar as most cinema, most releases were seen as blockbuster films, event films, tentpole films, so the smaller, whether it's your rom-coms or whatever, the films, as they say, the mid-budget films, the $30 to $40 million budget typical films, we're getting picked up to go straight to streaming, or wherever. So it's going to be a curious time over the next year to 18 months to see how the industry does bounce back, which I know it will do, but it's in terms of how it's going to bounce back. That's what I think is going to be very interesting and going to see. But we're already seeing that the theatrical window has been closed from now. It's like roughly, I think it's gone down to now well, I don't know, it's changed obviously from studio to studio, but it's been literally halved from what it was pre-pandemic, you know.
Yeah.
Some places, like whether it's 20 days or 45 days, then it's going onto the home platforms. Some places it's day and date home platforms as well as theatrical, which for some films will work, and for other films may not be the best approach to it, you know. But again, I don't know, I don't have the answers, to be honest, in that regard, but I just think things are going to change. How,
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Well, there's also the issue where if you don't have every single streamer on your, you have a TiVo box, don't you, over there or something? If you don't have everything, then for example, we were talking about the Oscars the other day with some other colleagues, and if they don't, and they're like, well, where did you watch that, Simone? And I'm like, yeah, I have a subscription to everything, I had to admit. But most people don't, and they don't know where to find these. I mean, they were kind of, some of the choices in the selections were, I was going to say avant-garde. No, they were just like film buff choices. So they weren't like popcorn movies. So they wouldn't be on everywhere anyway in the regular cinemas. And if you don't have, you know, Amazon and Netflix and Disney and you are not going to be able to see as much as you would if you were to just go to your local chain anyway, because it's just less accessible. But hey,
here, £100 there, you know, £50 here. You know?
Yeah, you can spend a ton on subscriptions. There's some that you must have. I've got a couple that I even forgot about that I'm paying every month for indie film that, you know, you forget because there's so much to choice as well.
Yeah, but that's what they were saying, you know, about the whole cutting the cord thing, where people they don't want to buy a subscription cable packages or satellite packages because they didn't need half the things that were on there. So it's like,
Yeah,
I'll just pay for this streamer and whatnot.
what you
But
need.
then
Yeah,
it becomes then, so then you cut the cord in terms of cable, but then it's like, okay, but now I need this streamer and that streamer and that streamer, and then you end up paying more than what you was paying previously.
exactly, because not everything is on Netflix.
I mean, I get, like, again, I get that as creators, that's beneficial to us because that gives us more avenues to get our work out there. So I'm very much aware of that. But then also as consumers, I'm also aware that, okay, like, are we? Yeah. And again, those aren't decisions for me to make, but I'm just very much aware of what the consumers are also experiencing as well, in terms of having to have access to all of the content that they want. Now it requires, again, a specific subscription to this platform, that platform, and so on and so forth. But I don't know, I think ultimately it's great for us, and hopefully it will ultimately be great for the consumer as well. Ultimately.
Yeah. Well, you have to find that niche, like who can you get to watch? You know, is your market audience going to watch your film? You know, if you put it out there, you know, how do you, which one is it? You know, I know the big ones, they cater to pretty much everyone.
Yeah.
You know, but how do you get in? You know, so it doesn't get buried under thousands of titles. You know.
Yeah, I think that's the thing too, because it could be it's one thing having your work on a platform, but it's also another making sure that it also gets seen. You know, it's like having your CD in a store or your Blu-ray in a store or whatever. It's great. That's the great first step. But then beyond that, you also want to make sure that people are actually seeing it, that there's the marketing budget behind it, that it's not going to get buried amongst, you know, whatever other titles. So yeah. I think ultimately I'm optimistic because I think it gives us a lot more options and a lot more opportunities. So yeah, I just it's be curious to see how the industry goes over the next year or so. I think.
Well, as long as you keep going, you know, it's like you just have to keep with it. You know, don't give up. You know, don't back down. You just, I think as artists, we really have a responsibility to just keep creating and not give in. Because I know a friend of mine who's from China, she was telling me that when she was working in a production company, they were always told of what kind of story they had to do. You know, like there could be no foul language, there could be no nudity, no lovemaking scenes. Everything was rated G. You know, so your limit of creativity had severe boundaries, and so how do we as artists, you know, continue being creative without having to worry about, you know, it's like if we give in on one thing, are we giving into something else? You know, how do we maintain that freedom in being creative, you know, and still getting funding and still, you know, being able to make quality films?
Yeah.
I think that's always been the case. So there's always been some kind of stipulation put on the. Okay, so if you're looking, if you are involved in an industry which requires the input of others or the participation of others, then from that moment there's going to be some kind of stipulation, whether it's the person financing your film saying, okay, I'll finance it, but I want to make sure that so and so is cast in this role or whatever. Or it could be a case of, okay, we can go to this region of the world for financing or as a production partner, but because they're based in this region of the world, that means we can't mention XYZ political thing, whatever.
So just rewrite those scenes.
So there's always stipulations. Now, if I was an artist that sat here and literally painted what I wanted or took photos of what I wanted, and that was the beginning and end of the creative input, the creation of the art, then there's pretty much no stipulation. I can make what I want. But I think there's always been and there's always going to be those stipulations, because the minute that you require the assistance of other people or the input of other people, whether it's in terms of, again, their money or their connections as a producer or their talent behind the camera or whatever it is, there's always going to be a stipulation of that, a stipulation attached to that. So I think that won't change, because it's literally always been that way. And for as long as we need other people, we have to be able to meet in the middle somewhat, and that doesn't mean making grand concessions. It could just be simply the way that you're used to doing certain things. I don't know. There's always some concessions. I may be used to working with sorry,
Oh, but I think what's interesting about that too, I mean, if you find someone and you don't like what they're offering, you still have the option to go find someone else. I mean, that's not your only person. And what's so great about being a filmmaker, you have, if you're willing to do the work and put it out there, especially if you have that hit film or something that really appeals to people because you have a great story. I mean, you have even more freedom to make those kind of decisions, because as a collaborative, film being a collaborative effort, we always have to make those concessions. That's just, getting along, and you're willing to do that. But to be in a situation where you only have one source providing for you to do it and you have to give in, I mean, I hope it never becomes that way, that we always have the freedom to make that choice. If something doesn't work, you can find someone else.
I definitely hear that. I think my approach to things, for example, is we can do so much stuff in-house. Like, regarding myself and Simone, like, we have the facilities and the means to do it, whether it's to go out and shoot what we want to shoot, in terms of camera gear, light gear, all that stuff, and in terms of post-production, we can do that as well, like the whole thing. So I completely understand what you're saying, because I've been in situations where I felt let down by people before, or I felt, damn, like I felt like I was trying to find the right word for it, almost locked into a situation where, like, I don't, this isn't the right producing or filmmaking partner for me, or company for me, because we're obviously not on the same page, So my way around that is making sure that I'm never, as much as I can be, we're never locked into a situation where we're dependent on that kind of partnership. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And I think it's important that we find the right people that can help bring our what's in here and to bring it to life. Do you know what I mean? And those people, like Simone, for example, the minute me and Simone work together and we realized we work really amazingly well together, okay, we work together on everything going forward. Similarly to for example, my first AC, for example, works on everything that I do, and my other producing partners. There's certain people that once I realize that these are people that I can depend on, that I like personally, that I like professionally, that we don't have to make those kind of concessions, and that we're all on the same page. Those are the people that I keep around me, that we work with repeatedly, and just scaling that up. I think it's also important where if you're going to a large studio or production company, ideally, obviously, you'd like to partner with someone that believes in the vision and that can say, okay, I see what you're doing. I've known this from the beginning. I know where you're going with this. I have faith in you, and I'll support you, and we'll make it happen together. Because again, the worst thing is having that restriction over you, and you're just feeling like you're locked, and like you can't create, you can't make the art because there's so many restrictions placed on it.
It's like a good marriage versus a bad marriage, huh?
and it is essentially a marriage, you know, because you're around these people like 24/7 pretty much, especially when you're in the thick of filmmaking and stuff, you know. It's often a high pressure environment. You're working against the clock. You're this, you know, it's very stressful filmmaking most of the time, you know.
That's why you have to love it.
Around you that can support that. Yeah, you want people around you that can support you in that regard, and that aren't going to be a hindrance, you know. So yeah, I think it's key to find the right partnerships, basically, as much as it's possible to try to find the right partnerships in terms of what you want to do and the path that you want to take, and doing it with them.
Well, that's good. How long have you and Simone been working together now?
I think like 5-6 years, something like that, I think. When was it? Was 2016, I think, wasn't it?
That's a really good question.
I
think 26. What? No. So 2016 is when we first started shooting. No, it wasn't. It was 2017. We started shooting Double Entendre.
The one that I met you and David on, was that?
That was
in
2015. That was 2015. End of 2015.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, and then you did that other thing in Wales in 2016.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's about 5-6 years basically.
When you shoot, do you mostly shoot in London or around, or do you go to like different countries?
Everywhere. Like we shot London. We shot a short film called Ascension. We shot up in like the mountains of Wales and the lakes and stuff in Snowdonia in Wales, which was amazing. It's also where the army flies their helicopters like really low, like through the mountains and stuff. So they came over the set several times, which was crazy. And it's also where the Royal Air Force, they fly like like below the mountains, like with their fighter jets. It's crazy. So we had all that to contend with. We filmed again. We was due to film in Paris. We have a lot of the stuff that we have again is very like international based. We filmed in Spain before for another short that I done called Prologue as well. What else? All over the gaff, really.
It's been a lot. So right, but you plan on continuing to work together and keep that relationship going, right?
Yeah, because I think once you find people that you work well with, then you don't want to break that. You know, I think most filmmakers, they have a key set people that they often work with on most of their projects. You know, and I think it's similar. Like we've done projects aside. Like Simone we should probably tell you about in a second. She's produced an amazing project that's going to start the festival circuit. I think anytime now, isn't it, Simone? As well.
Yeah, actually, we've got our first selection, but I didn't post about it yet.
Yeah, what is it?
I will do. So the short, it's another short that I finished that I did. It's called A Tree Fell Today. I was producer. I would call it an experimental drama about a young woman dealing with the painful memory of the loss of her child. And I just really love the way that the director Oliver chose to tell the story using lots of flashbacks, and sometimes you're not sure if you're watching her unravel or if you're watching her memories, and I think it's really beautifully shot. So that's just being launched onto the festival circuit, and we've got our first selection for the People's Film Festival, which is a nice cool London film festival. So hopefully I'll have some more selections coming up for that. I'm really proud of it. That was a big team as well on a 2-day shoot, so we did a lot in those 2 days. But you know, it can be done.
For people who may not know, what exactly is an experimental short when you say it?
So an experimental short, I would say, is one that doesn't do traditional narrative, the 3 parts perhaps, or use traditional conventional storytelling. So you don't get the story from A to B. Perhaps sometimes it's completely mixed up. You're seeing the middle of the story at the beginning and things like this, or it's to use the way that the cinematographer is choosing to shoot the film. I would say non-linear is a nice phrase. So you're not getting A to B, the beginning of the story and the end and the middle. You're getting it all jumbled up. Perhaps You're getting non-conventional use of cinematography, of lighting. Music might be important. There might be no dialogue. All sorts of different things. So the Overcoat has got 2 experimental awards. So I would say the Overcoat is quirky, experimental, and the A Tree Fell Today is more, I was going to say more drama with a touch of horror, smidgen of horror there. So completely different, although they both fit into the experimental box. I don't know. Did I explain it well? I don't know.
I know some people were like, "What does experimental mean?" No,
unusual, perhaps. Non-traditional.
Not your norm, right?
But yeah, perfect.
All right, I like that. Well, and you have to push those boundaries. You have to, what's new, how can you make it different? What can be shared differently?
That's exactly what I think the whole year has been about for all of us as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot more experimental film on the circuits now as a result of last year and as a result of filmmakers being forced to think out of the box and change and adapt.
And just keep doing. You have to, right? And just for survival, it's like you'll burst if you can't do something creative.
Oh yeah.
I was saying this to Simone actually the other day, that I couldn't imagine so I have a creative outlet. We all have our creative outlets because of what we do. I couldn't imagine what somebody that works a 9 to 5 that doesn't have this same creative outlets that we do, but then has suddenly found their world tipped upside down, where they're now spending their whole day. Imagine they live alone. They're spending a whole day at home in front of their laptop, perhaps. They can't go out nowhere. And they're essentially their whole year has been like that. And especially for people that don't have a support system, perhaps a family or whatever, I think it's literally kept me sane, being able to have this creative outlet that I have. And I feel it's such a blessing. But my heart really genuinely goes out to people that don't have the outlets that we have, because I'm thinking, I don't know how I would cope. If I was sitting on the day and I was just, if I was office work or clerical work or whatever, and then that was it, and I had no I wasn't legally allowed to have interactions with anybody. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't imagine what that would do to my mental health, to my emotional well-being. So I don't know, man. It's I don't know. Last year made me very. I'm trying to find the right words for it so it's not misinterpreted by anybody, but it made me very. I want to use the word emotional, but that's not the word that I'm looking for. It made me very aware. I think it made me very aware of the emotions of others. I'm trying to find the right way to phrase it.
Right.
With all that was going on in the world, it's. There was a time where during last summer, where during the peak of the Black Lives Matter protests, and it got to the point where I had to just step away from social media for a little while, because it was so draining. It was so. I know I'm maybe going for a tangent, but it was just trauma. And on one side, I understand that unless people are triggered by the trauma that we've seen, that we've experienced, things won't change, because it will just carry on or whatever. So there has to be a certain reaction of people for there to be a change. But last year in particular, just things that were going on, it was just really I just had to take a bit of a time out, because I was like, well, this is a lot, it's a lot going on in the world.
That's when you need film, though. That's when you need film to take people out of the reality that they're experiencing, and that's what people need. We know that there's complete overkill of negativity on the news. Some people, first thing they do in the morning as they wake up is program themselves by turning the news on, and if it's all doom and gloom, the whole day, people don't realize that subconsciously gets into your psyche, and it can F up your day if you're showing something really distressing.
Yeah.
If you're showing, for example, what's happening in Gaza and Israel first thing, and then for me, I can't do that because then I'm just like crying the whole day. Do you know what I mean? And people don't realize, and it's just, as you say, it's been over the top what we've been exposed to. So that's when you need to make the effort to step out of the reality, go to the cinema, or just take yourself to that happy place, because it will make you sick otherwise.
Yeah, and I think that's been one of the things that's always driven me as a filmmaker, because one of my approaches to it, like one of my internal rules is, if somebody can just pick up a camera and shoot what we're shooting now, then I'm doing the wrong project. Like it's wrong. Like I always want to do stuff which takes you somewhere, which puts you into a world which you don't actually exist in right now. That for me is what I love, and that's what I like to create as well. So with the Overcoat, it was putting people into this timeless place, this place where they can't quite place where it's occurring. You know, it's shot in Oxford, but it looks like it could be, what time frame is this taking place in? You know, and then the other stuff that we're doing, and particular stuff we have coming up, a lot of it is very high concept, you know, and it puts you into, it's really world building IP stuff, and that's what I like. So I like to be taken somewhere, and I think that is something also which I hope that the world also wants and needs right now as well, to be taken somewhere away from what people in general are experiencing right now, but take it to a world where it's a whole new experience for them, something for them to get lost in and to enjoy that, you know. So yeah, I think, I don't know, it's been a crazy last year, but I think it's pretty much reinforced the way that I do things, and that I feel I should continue doing my approach to how we're doing it is, I feel, the correct one. You know? Yeah, it's crazy time.
Well, it's great that you're so aware of it too, you know, because you're very conscious of what you're doing and what you're creating. And I think that's really important, because a lot of people go through life, not really being aware of what their life is. So if anything, this time has given us an opportunity to say, okay, this is, who I am, or this is an opportunity for me to really figure out what I want to do and who am I, and dive into that. And as filmmakers, you get to constantly explore that just in that state of creation, which is really exciting. And here you are, you're in London, a very happening city, just so much happening on so many different levels, and you are still creating. And I find that incredibly inspiring and exciting. And I love following you guys. And I know great things are coming from you. And I know I'll be hearing about you on the Oscars one of these days. And I'm like, hey, red carpet, baby. It's gonna happen. You guys are on that path, and you are, you have that talent and that drive, and you're in that stage, not letting anything stop you. And I think that's incredible. And I know I appreciate that, to see that in fellow artists. So thank you. Thank you for both of you being you. Anyways, and I greatly appreciate your time. I know you're, in another time zone. We're doing a little time traveling here, which is exciting. The Overcoat, there's the Facebook page, right? The
Overcoat movie, Overcoat movie on Instagram.
And the one about the tree, is that on social media too?
A tree fell today. It's on mine, so I'm at Simone McIntyre on Instagram. Otherwise, you can check out hanging lantern pictures.
All right, and Justin, you're on social media also. Are you on Instagram?
Social media, Juice Black, JUICEBLACK on Instagram, and same on Twitter, Juice Black on Twitter as well.
Okay, I have to ask, how did you get the nickname of Juice?
So I've had it since I was a little kid. It actually came about from there's a carton of a drink called Just Juice, it's like an orange drink and whatnot. And just as a joke, when I was like, I don't know, like 5, 6, 7, like that kind of age, my friends used to call me Just Juice as a joke, because my name is Justin, so they call me Just Juice. And then so Juice just stuck, literally stuck. So literally all through childhood, as an adult, everyone, all my close, particularly like my circle of friends, everyone just knows me as Juice, so they'll call me Juice, So
I like it. Get that power going, baby. Yeah, I love it. All right, cool. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for your time. Thank you for joining me on Sophia Luisa's So Zoom In. I look forward to following you and seeing you, hopefully again soon. Hopefully I hear Cannes is going to be happening this summer. I do plan on going, or you don't know, or
Can.
I'm personally not. I'm not planning on going.
Next year.
Next year.
More so, I think it's going to be. It's still hard to plan anything as well, because I think restrictions could come into force and things could change at at the drop of a hat. So I think next year's the safer bet, to be honest.
Stay in the fluidity of going with the flow, right? All right.
Yeah, maybe a last minute trip,
You're in London, get
Yeah, we can. We just get the Eurostar.
That's how it was for me. I think either last year or the year, or the last, or 2019 or 18. I can't remember. No, 2019. I literally went with a few days, maybe like a week maximum of planning. I wasn't planning on going, but then one of my investment partners from China said, "Okay, I'm going to be in Cannes. I'm going to see you there, right?" I was like, "Yeah." So before you knew it, I was in Cannes. So who knows how it turn out. Yeah.
All right, well, hopefully I will see both of you live at a film festival or somewhere, somehow soon. For sure. But thank you guys so very much for your time. I really appreciate it. All right.
Thank you.
Take care. Mwah. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.